You're listening to Radio Podcast. 21st Century Entrepreneurship. Hello. My name is Martin Piskoric, and I'm asking thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and executive coaches around the world simple questions about the leadership gap we are facing in the 21st century. Maybe some of my respective guests' answers can help you in finding new ways of thinking, problem solving, work-life balance, and having higher resolution of mind. Today, I will talk with Stephen Gans about the future of humanity, or better to say, reinventing humanity, if I understood well, Steve.
Well, that's the topic.
Okay, thank you, Steve, for clarifying our today's topic. To start with, can you introduce yourself to our respective listeners?
Sure. I started life out as a philosopher. It was a calling. I had always asked challenging questions, and I realized I could get paid for doing that. And so I became an academic philosopher and then a worldly philosopher. I decided to practice philosophy first as a psychotherapist and then as a business man, starting a school for psychologists in humanistic psychology. And then I started an Institute for Management Studies in London, where I lived. And I continue to pursue a kind of worldly or practical philosophical practice, keeping informed about such topics as we want to talk about the future.
Well, I'm thrilled talking to you. I've experienced you as a person that have holistic approach to a lot of topics regarding your bio. And I'm sure there will be a lot of people around the globe looking forward listening this interview. Not only because you are such a great expert, but regarding the topic that will become more and more relevant in near future. Once I started following the artificial intelligence topics, I realized the future is already happening. There are huge impacts on our society that a lot of people will experience. Am I right?
Well, we're living in, by the way, thanks very much for saying those kind words. Yeah, we're living in exceptional times, and what we're living in are what has been termed the exponential technological evolution. So that things are happening at a very rapid pace of change and disruption. And so this is going to be more and more disorienting to business as usual.
So as Peter, can you help me with his last name?
Peter Diamandis.
Diamandis, yes, that's right. Peter Diamandis writes in one of his last blog, the next evolutionary step will be a human-scale transformation that he called meta-intelligence. Biological evolution started some 3.5 billion years, as we all know, with the first simple life forms. Then came biological forms incorporating biological technology that allows them to manipulate energy and information. 1.5 billion years ago, they started collaborate by forming the first multicellular life. And the final step before the human evolution came 400 million years ago, with first species crawled from oceans onto the shores. Can you continue the stages?
Well, I mean, we understand, I think, pretty much that it's contained in the phrase ontology recapitulates phylogeny. So
can you explain a little bit more?
So the ontogeny is ourselves, the humans.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're a fetus in the womb, we go through the evolutionary stages. Mm-hmm. From first the egg, and then the egg starts to develop its various organs, but they start out to be very much fish-like, and then reptilian and mammalian, and early mammals, later mammals, and then finally humans. So we know evolution.
That's good.
Through our own actual experience. Mm-hmm. And so we are connected in ways that we forget to the entire evolutionary process.
Okay, so I'm sure that the part of that of evolution are our civilizations, different civilizations that we went through. So can you describe our history of civilizations, maybe in terms of awareness? Firstly, if you can give us your definition of awareness itself, and then tell us the importance of it.
Well, it's difficult to speak of levels of awareness across civilizations, I think, because we have histories that are skewed in the direction of the primary movers of those groups who typically were involved in creating more dominance over their fellow humans. Mm-hmm. And so the thrust to dominate and control others, I believe, is first lowest level of awareness, or the level of competition over scarcity. What we want to move toward is cooperation and a mindset of abundance. And I believe that is our challenge.
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I find awareness is a very important issue. When I started with business and I was very young, had my first radio broadcast when I was only 16 years old. I was very, let's say, ego-driven. Many years later, I realized ego was my unconsciousness protection regarding my emotional immaturity. And I was not able to cope with all the stress and lack of knowledge, understanding, and experience application. Well, basically, that brought me to making a lot of mistakes, having troubles with relationships, and finally break down. Luckily, I started with personal development on early ages, and it takes me years to learn about awareness itself, not to mention acceptance and implementing things like positive psychology and other aspects of thinking and living to start producing new paradigms, more harmonized, aligned with the context, interaction, and quality of business goals. So you had a great academy, as you told us, full of highly successful businessmen and many, many years of merging philosophy with practical business issues. So you are absolutely right person to ask for, did we progress in awareness from your point of view?
Well, I would still say that if you look at today, and the globe has basically become a global supermarket or shopping mall where everybody can get anything they want for a price. But it still seems to be based on the principle of accumulation of power and might, as evidenced by money and power. And there's the have and have not scenario where the elites or the 2% have and the 98% are basically subsisting. And there's a group, an underclass, who is in poverty. So I think that whole pattern needs to be transformed radically, so that everyone is a have, and then there may be super haves, people who still want their yachts or big houses or whatever, private jets or whatever turns them on. And I think there'll be a lot less guilt as long as they realize that they're not depriving anyone else of anything, since there will be abundance, so everyone will have.
So if I understood you well, there is still a huge, big gap between people with money and power and people that are immersed in poverty.
A huge gap. But that gap is being reduced. In some sense, we're more painfully aware of it since more and more people are getting online, and soon we're going to have another 3 billion people who are not online connected, and they will become more aware of the gap.
I find very challenging the state of awareness among most opinion leaders and makers, as well as all those people immersed into poverty. I'm still in the dilemma: are we ready to be on our own? No matter how much negative aspects of controlled society I think of, our responsibility as individuals, taking into consideration not only awareness but values we have, the question of persistence, focus, positive thinking, etc. I mean, what kind of prerequisites do we need to have before the next evolution steps?
Well, you see, only we can do it as individuals, but no one can do it alone. And so if we think we are simply on our own, I think that would be a misreading of the reality. More and more we'll become more interdependent. And our networks and our relationships will determine to what extent we thrive or the reverse.
Is that based on technology?
More and more so, it will be. It was always, to some extent, the case, if you think about it, that we depend, that any project involves a group of people contributing to the success of the project.
Yeah, I understand.
And then there's also people who need to endorse what it is that is being offered. So more and more we're finding, though, that it's the crowd that is very much determining through the social media the acceptance or the lack of acceptance of any given product or service or business. And and also the generation itself of the funding of what is and isn't going to actually work in the environment will depend very much on its acceptance by whether it is a viral acceptance or whether it's simply just a bright idea that someone had, but no one really wants or needs.
Mm. We spoke about awareness. The challenge I see is the technology is in rapid advance. It's old story about exponential growth. Think just about telephones. We have just 20 years ago first personal computers, from P6 to ZX Spectrum or Commodore 64. I mean, with only a few kilobytes left for programs. I mean, not megabytes, but kilobytes. And look at our smartphones today. Is there a challenge?
Well, the smartphone has basically disrupted about 20 or 30 different niche businesses that used to be billion-dollar businesses. I mean, take Kodak, for example, the photography business. There no longer exists Kodak. That's just one instance.
Mm. So, ready or not, the future is coming. Can you tell us more about next steps we are facing in next, let's say, 20 to 30 years?
Well, as Peter in his newsletter introduces his meta-intelligence topic, he says that people might find it a bit far out. Mm-hmm. And so I'm warning.
Like a science fiction.
That it might sound a bit far out.
Yeah.
But there are really two trends that are converging that make an exponential growth of the exponential growth. Exponential on top of exponential. So it's an exponential squared, a double exponential. And those two things are one, the brain computer interface or integration trend, where we will then basically ingest those smartphones, which are going to reduce to the size of molecules and be ingested into the brain and connect the brain with the cloud.
I mean,
and each other.
Yeah.
And then there's the development of artificial intelligence, deep mind, deep learning, in which artificial intelligence on its own self-directed path will reach something called a singularity that Ray Kurzweil, who's a great futurologist, names it, where he anticipates somewhere in the I think he's thinking about it really occurring maybe in the mid-40s, 2040 something, but many people think it's going to happen sooner, where the artificial intelligence is going to develop intelligence that's so vast and beyond human that we will have to become a virtually hybrid human to keep up with understanding what that intelligence is going to be capable of transforming. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my next question would be, in the process of getting to singularity, are there any implications on job roles?
Well, there's already the pretty much clear view, although not everybody subscribes to it, and people do think there will be, including Ray Kurzweil, a whole new set of employability in jobs to compensate for the loss, but something like 50% of jobs that are professional will be done by artificial intelligence.
So and what are the predictions for next 5-6 years?
Well, they're moving in that direction, but it's hard to say. But I certainly in 20 years, but in 5 or 6 years, there'll be more still mechanical, robotic type worker jobs that will be eliminated. But the jobs of professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and all of those, and managers and middle managers and most businessmen will be eliminated. And so there'll really only be room for entrepreneurs, in my humble opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there will be some social implications as well on the road.
Huge social implications, cataclysmic social implications, and what those will require to be addressed will be something like a guaranteed income. Some people call it a negative income tax, where people will be paid a guaranteed sum by governments.
So from your point of view, entrepreneurship is the future.
Yes, clear.
Can you tell us more about what kind of entrepreneurship you are talking about?
Well, all I'll do is, if I might, I'll give you a little glimpse of a project that I'm working on myself. Would that be okay?
Yeah, of course.
So I believe to prepare us for a healthy brain-computer integration or interface, the human brain-mind needs to be optimized. I'm working on a brain-mind optimization project that will be exponential in growth, I believe, as we develop it.
That sounds very exciting. Are you progress in the project?
There is a brain optimization technology. The way it works is the brain has brain waves. I'm sure everyone would be familiar with the brain waves. So we see that in the EKGs, EEGs, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Brain waves, the oscillation of the brain, emitting all different aspects of the brain are emitting different waves in different rhythms. Mm-hmm. These rhythms and waves have been translated into sound and played back through electrodes to the brain itself. And the brain has shown itself to be able to optimize itself to the point where the brain now shows brain patterns after optimization that are very much more symmetrical and integrated than prior to the treatment. And these patterns look very much like the patterns of advanced Tibetan meditators after 30, 40 years of meditation, where they've created optimized brains. An optimized brain is a brain that's able to move instantly from a state of deep relaxation to deep focus and turn itself on and off at every moment in the present to whatever is called for by the task. But there's also multiple areas of optimization that the mind and person need to achieve in order to feel happy. They need to find purpose. They need to develop relationships. They need to have a legacy. They need to have experiences that are challenging, exciting, adventurous. They need to have financial freedom. Multiple areas and sectors that are required for an optimized human. And this goes back to philosophy and what Aristotle spoke of when he spoke of in his Ethics of how one links happiness, or what everyone seeks, with goodness. So to be a good man means to be good at being human. And I would now say it's to be good at being transhuman, or good at being able to meld with the artificial intelligence, human and artificial. So this goodness, or being good at being good at functioning has never really been fully defined. We know what it is to be a good sports athlete. We know what it is to be a good musician and playing well at an instrument, but we've never really quite understood fully what it is to be good at being human. So this is the practical philosophical path I've been following to better define exactly what that is. And I believe your question about awareness is a huge element in that, the mind and its development. But there's the person, there's the body, there's the love relationships, there's the cooperation with others in the community. So there are multiple levels of goodness or being good at being human. And being good at being human involves also the ethical dimension. And the ethical dimension turns out to be putting other people first.
Are we all capable to achieve that? I mean,
that was a lot to take in. But I hope you did what I say make sense?
Yeah, definitely. My last question is, are we all capable of achieving that? Do we all have capabilities to start being aware, to start using your techniques that you are developing?
Well, here's been the problem of self-development, self-improvement, self-help, all that whole industry, that a less than optimized mind, which is only a fraction of the power of the full brain, has been required to try to change the brain and the brain's habits. And of course, it's a bit like an ant trying to tell an elephant which way to go. And if the elephant wants to go one way and the ant wants to go the other way, it's going to go the way the elephant wants to go. Well, the brain means bad habits. Bad habits, and Aristotle also spoke about this, it's a matter of habit, reduce the optimization of becoming good at being human. And so that's, and also reduce awareness. So going the other way around, I believe, is going to be the solution to the problem, and that is to optimize the brain first. And only the brain at this point will be able to optimize itself without the dysfunctional mind interfering. Then the mind will be able to develop, based upon an optimized brain, far more effectively to be full functioning.
There are some situations where our states of our autopilot states are good. For example, driving a car, but we need to go one step further and raise our awareness levels.
Well, we have some patterns like driving cars or brushing our teeth that are good habits. We have some habits that we're too perhaps indulgent in substancing ourselves with various substances. That reduces our awareness or our effectiveness at times. And certainly driving when on a substance is highly dangerous, and yet people still do it. So, it depends on which habits that we're talking about. And we will always have to have habits. And the idea is to substitute good ones for not so good ones.
So with optimized brain, we can be more aware. And if we are more aware, then we can choose to use new habits, if I understood you well.
Well, that's still not yet researched to the degree that one can give evidence. And it's not clear that that will be the case. The optimized brain will be a precondition for healthy awareness or a healthy mind. The healthy mind needs to then develop on top of a healthy brain and then learn to seek and develop habits in life that are actually good for it, rather than the ones that it thinks are good but may not be so good. That is, certain pleasures that it seeks that it thinks are good, but maybe also, if one seeks a life of only self-pleasuring, then that's a fairly empty and possibly only even self-destructive life. But even certain lives that people seek of acquisition or power or dominance or having, material wealth, those may be at a certain point, a point of diminishing returns, where actually they become harmful rather than healthy at a certain point.
Very interesting. I think, Steve, that we opened a lot of very, very interesting topics, and thanks for this amazing conversation. It is always a pleasure talking to you, and looking forward to our next one.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being with you.
Thanks, Steve.